Jim was going to fill in for you.
I'm not gonna run
The regular meeting for the city of Plymouth, Thursday, September 22nd, 2022 is called to order. I want to make sure that everyone that's on the Zoom call realizes that if you want to raise your hand and participate in any of the agenda items, push *9, and to mute your phone, push *6, mute and unmute. So could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember White,
Present.
Councilmember Sim,
Present.
Councilmember Amoruso,
Present.
Vice Mayor Ackerman,
Present.
Mayor Kleinfelder.
Here.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would, oh, he's not, you didn't tell me that. You got a better offer.
No, I think it's in the
Oh, well then, we're going to hold off for a minute, and we do not have an invocation. So we are going to wait 1 minute because we have a special guest from Florida that's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
No pressure.
He's got the door locked.
I know, he's listening, he's not gonna come out. I refuse.
Maybe his father can go find him.
I can fill it up, I have to.
We're fine, got a shortened agenda.
Or he's across the street having a beer.
That's also a possibility. Okay. Mary Ann Ackerman, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
Do it again.
Again. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the city council regular meeting agenda. I would entertain a motion.
Just make a motion to accept the consent calendars. The agenda as proposed.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the regular agenda for the meeting of September 22nd, 2022 as presented. And we have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Sim,
Aye.
Councilmember Amoruso,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ackerman,
Aye.
Mayor Kleinfelder.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item number 3 on the agenda is public comment. Under Government Code Section 54954.3, citizens wishing to address the council for any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time by completing and submitting a speaker submittal form to the city clerk or following the COVID-19 advisory instructions noted on the first page of this agenda. Speakers will be called by the mayor at the point on the agenda when the item will be heard. Speakers are encouraged to keep comments to 3 minutes or less. State name and community of residence, but doing so is not necessary, not required. Under the provisions of the California Government Code, the City Council is prohibited from materially discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda unless it can be demonstrated to be of an emergency nature or urgent need to take immediate action arose after the posting of the agenda. We have 2 comment cards. I will call up Jim Wise, please.
Mayor Kleinfelder, members of the city council. I'm Jim Wise. I live in Plymouth. It's my area of residence. I may have gotten this wrong, but I wanted to just raise the question of a couple of items with regard to Veterans Park. I have gotten clarification on one of them already. Kathleen was kind enough to tell me that the funds that the city council has approved and set aside for Veterans Park will be included in the next check run, which is great because I wanted to provide just a quick update that our committee has unanimously selected a vendor that will do the granite and some of the landscaping considerations, and that was unanimous on behalf of our committee. In order to move forward with the acquisition of that granite, we need to get a 15% deposit. The funds that the city council will provide in the next check run will suffice that it'll cover that 50%, so we'll be good to go. We've got a little bit of a lead time, as you can imagine, for the acquisition of granite. The only other request that I would have is the committee has also drafted an MOU that is subsumed within the MOU that exists between the Rotary Club and the city council that extends to any subcontractors that will be used in this project. We have tried to incorporate and adopt all of those provisions that are in that MOU between the Rotary Club and the city council, and included that in our agreement with our contractor on the granite. And I would ask if the city would, with great expeditious consideration, take a look at our draft MOU and provide any edits and changes that they see fit to protect the city and its interests. And I thank you very much for the support. Getting the money moved as quickly as you did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Frank, did you have any comments about the timing of how we could do a review of the subcontractor language?
Yeah, I guess I would say that I'm happy to take a look at it as a courtesy to the Rotary, but technically speaking, it's between the Rotary and the subs, right? Is that what you're speaking of?
It is technically between the Rotary Foundation and the sub.
Okay.
But the MOU that established that this joint project has provisions that the city has required to be part of that MOU. And I just want to make sure that we have appropriately captured the city's concerns in those provisions.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm happy to take a look at it. We put that in the MOU, to be quite honest, so we didn't have to look at it again. So that you know what you're supposed to do, and then you put that in there. But I'm happy to take a look at it as a courtesy, and also because we have the opportunity to make sure that our interests are covered. So happy to take a look.
That was my concern.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We have another comment card from Jamie Levanko regarding the TOT Harvest Festival. This is on the agenda technically, but it's on the correspondence for approval of the funds.
Thank you. Yeah, I did know it was on your consent agenda tonight, but I don't know that you had information from me, so I was going to speak briefly, if that's okay.
Oh, perfect.
Jamie Levanko, Plymouth by birth, Middletown by marriage. So technically Middletown resident. I also thought while I was here, I just discovered where I lost my pitcher full of flags. I must have left that at the 4th of July parade. So when you see me carry that away, do not think that I am looting City Hall
We
tonight.
appreciate your donation.
Anyways, I have a flyer about the future Harvest Festival, if you don't mind if I pass that out.
No. I mean, no as in yes.
So we had a little glitch in some communications on this, and so I'm sorry that it came to you late. I brought you a flyer for this year's event, the actual application, as well as last year's budget and financials, just so you could have that for your own knowledge. I always want the city to know that we're good stewards of your funding with the Rotary Club when we do these types of events, so I think that information is good for you to have. The proceeds from the Harvest Festival are earmarked for the Veterans Park. That's where the proceeds went last year as well. It was actually a push in funding last year, so we actually did make $3,300, but without the city's funding, we probably would, we would only have made 500. We're doing a couple things to adjust this year. Last year, because it was the first year, we were pretty low, like we charged $5 for the chili cook-off. We'll certainly change that this year and try to make sure that the event is a little more profitable. We think we had around 400 folks visit the event last year. This year it's our goal to bring about 500, which I think is a nice number for our community. I just noticed that ION just put out a poster for their own Harvest Festival, which is really a mirror of ours. So I guess that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, so we'll take that. We are going to come back and ask if we can potentially close Main Street from Mineral to Poplar this year, so that we can actually expand the tractor show. Pat Rohan and some of the antique tractor guys have promised that they will bring us some additional tractors this year, so we thought that would be a fun addition. So those are some of the changes that we're hoping to make this year to make the event even more successful than it was in the past. I should close by letting you know that I am an awfully busy person, and as such, I have recruited some incredible help this year. So Rich Hoffman is the co-chair on this event. Jennifer Pritchard is going to do the sidewalk art competition. Jess is doing the wine, and we have a really great group working on this event together. So we have lots of hands on deck. That is actually all I had to report. We'll try to get on your agenda. I think that's necessary to get the street closure, maybe not. But I do know that it will require some funding because you'll have to have city staff on, funded for that. If we close the street, I think you have to have city personnel there to do that. So I don't know if that needs to be a future agenda item, but it's certainly something that we want to lap back and request.
We have done this in the past, and we're not taking action on anything, so Frank doesn't slap my hand. When we've done this in the past, the city manager has the authority to close a road for the day for events. So we may be able to, I'll talk to Frank later, we may be able to you're good to go, talk to Kathleen, so.
Perfect, thank you. And then on the harvest note, last year with the enormous generosity of the Amador Flower Farm, we decorated the roundabout with pumpkins and corn stalks for the season. And we would certainly like to proceed with doing that again this year. We kind of got permission from Selby last year technically to do that. So I can't imagine that there would be any objection, but if there is, maybe someone can reach out and let us know. Thank you.
Jamie?
Just want to let you know, yeah, that's not an issue to decorate the roundabout. We just need to know so that we can make sure that the safety measures are taken. And I already plan on staffing for your event on that Saturday, so you're covered there.
Perfect, thank you. And we'll make sure we reach out on the day we're going to decorate.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more public comment from anyone that is currently in City Hall?
Yeah, Joe Coburn, and I just wanted, I'm co-chair with Jim on the Veterans Park. And Jamie didn't mention the fact that the harvest event funds is going towards the Veterans Park, the old Veterans Park. But what I wanted to mention is we're still open for receiving names, and almost weekly I run into people that are eligible that have not been got their names in yet. So please talk to the friends and neighbors, whatever, and see about it. I actually found someone in Zinfandel that is qualifies to be on the line and didn't know that it was even happening, so. Get the word out and try to get those names in for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
I just have a question for John. I'm sorry, I missed something. Names for what?
Plaque and-
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Hi, City Council, I'm Jill Sim. I am the community volunteer leader for the American Red Cross for the mother-lode counties of Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne County. September is Disaster Preparedness Month. And we've had the privilege this last 2 weeks of going in at our wonderful little Plymouth Elementary School, 183 kids worth, and giving preparedness, age-appropriate preparedness information in both English and to send home in Spanish also for those who speak Spanish at home. And so I just want to say what a treasure that school is. With the teachers, Mr. Horacek, the principal, it's fabulous. And it's such a nice thing that we have in this city. And both my grandchildren have enjoyed it too. So our basic message is just get prepared, check your smoke alarms, and make a plan. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in City Hall that would like to speak under public comment? Is there anyone on the Zoom call that would like to raise their hand and speak under public comment?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, item number 5 on the agenda is the consent calendar. I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Sim.
Aye.
Councilmember Amoruso.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ackerland.
Aye.
Mayor Kleinfelter.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item number 7.1 on the agenda is the City Council review and discussion of Zinfandel Community Facilities District. This item was placed on the agenda at request of our favorite ladies. Hope they're on the Zoom. What is here? Yay! And this evening's beginning part of this is for information only, so that the council and the public can have more information about what a community facilities district is. So I think Frank is ready to take over this.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll provide kind of a primer on what CFDs are, what they're not. I'm not really sure exactly what the questions are from the community, and obviously we can try to address those, and hopefully some of this information will be helpful in addressing it. So in 2016, by way of background, the city, as part of its development with Zinfandel Ridge LLC and through its development agreement, established a taxing district in the Zinfandel community, known as CFD Plymouth City Plymouth Community Facilities District number 2016-1, also known as Zinfandel Services District. That's established under the Melrose Community Facilities Act of 1982. And what it does is it's a tool for public agencies, not just cities, could be counties, special districts, cities, other kinds of public agencies, even JPAs, to basically impose special taxes on real property in the city, in this case, in the city. It is, what it does is it essentially imposes special taxes and for the purpose of funding revenue for either facilities or services. So either capital projects, facilities, or services like public safety, maintenance, those kinds of things. And I'll talk specifically about what this one does But that's just at a general level. When there are facilities involved, one of the cool things under for community facilities district is it has an opportunity for cities to issue bonds and then collect taxes to pay off those bonds. Developers like them because financing is cheaper than if they were to get it on the private market. In this case, because what is being funded through the services in Zinfandel what is being funded through the CFDs in Zinfandel are services, not facilities. There was no bond issue. So it's simply a property tax for services. Now, CFD is not, sometimes there's confusion. A CFD is not CSD. A CSD under California law is a community service district, which is essentially a standalone special district that can function in a lot of ways like a city. As far as there are whole communities, even in Northern California, that are CSD. So for example, in El Dorado County, you have the El Dorado Hills Community Service District that essentially functions like a city, provides programming, parks, recreation, maintenance, water, other services that are like a city, but it's technically a community service district. There's another one in the Tri-Valley area, and the name's escaping me right now. Maybe someone knows it. It's a pretty big CSD. It's by Lathrop, and it's escaping me right now. But it's another CSD. But essentially, for all intents and purposes, it feels and looks like a city. Sometimes they have their own police departments, etc. That, as a standalone public agency, would have its own legislative body, its own board in that case. A CFD, though, is a community facilities district, and when it says district, it just means a proposed boundary area where property that are inside that district will be taxed. So it's the district, but not in the fun way. I guess I would say it's literally a district for purposes of raising revenue for the specified purpose. Now, I've also said it's a special tax. There are generally two types of taxes. You have general taxes and you have special taxes. General taxes can be pure revenue raising that for general fund of cities, for example. Special taxes can only be used for specified purposes. And the threshold to pass any special tax in California is 2/3 or 66% of the electorate. The electorate, when it comes to CFDs, because it's involving taxes on real property, is it's determined by one of two ways. If the land that is subject to the proposed district area has 12 or more owners, then it requires 2/3 of all registered voters in the area. But if the land has less than 12 landowners, then it is by 2/3 of the property owners in the area. In the Zinfandel context, there was essentially one property owner. The city actually owned one small parcel, so they were technically also a landowner, but essentially it was one owner, and the owner, which is common in development projects, did a protest, agreed to the Melrose tax on the property that would then be imposed upon as a lien of special assessments, or a lien continuing against the property, continuing against the property and assessed annually with the secured property tax roll every year thereafter. In the CFD world, there are two types of these taxes. You have what they call the developer or development CFDs, and then you have what they call the voter CFDs. It's very rare to impose, but it does happen. It's just not as common because it's more difficult when you propose a tax to existing property owners that own their houses to agree by 2/3 vote to impose taxes in that district. It's easier in the development context because you essentially have one developer that owns the land, and the city or the public agency is able to know that, hey, if this development is built out, we have an ability to impose taxes to help with offset the impacts from this development. But it is not an impact fee. It's a special tax. It's not a CSD. It's not a general tax, but it also is not an impact fee either. It functions like an impact fee because they are supposed to be tied to services that were not pre-existing needs. So they have to be needs that are sort of created. But once they are collected, the difference is once they are collected, they're collected like any other special tax the city has. Think TOT. Even though it's a general tax, it's still a local tax. Think sales tax that the city has, and any other kinds of taxes. It comes into the city, and the city is only restricted on how it uses those tax based upon what the special tax purpose was. And in this case, it was essentially for two things: operations and maintenance on one hand, and these are spelled out in the formation documents. Operation and maintenance, and I have a definition I can read if you or the community is interested, and also for public safety purposes. Essentially, section 11.6 of the DA, which kind of outlines that the developer agreed that there would be this tax, specifies a public safety portion and operations and maintenance. And the definition for public safety include the cost of providing funding for the following services and related administrative costs, expenses and reserves for law enforcement, public protection and equipment, land and buildings, costs of personnel, professional contract services and services related thereto, fire services, suppression and prevention, rescue services and equipment, land and buildings, cost of personnel, professional contract services and services related thereto. And then as far as the operations and maintenance piece, it was for ongoing maintenance and operation of public roads and streets, bike lanes, parking bays, bridges, culverts, traffic signals, traffic signs, striping and legends, street lights, frontage improvements such as curbs, gutters, paths, street signs, landscaping, drainage facilities, including ditches, public trails, boundary fencing is required, neighborhood parks, and open space. Again, I've talked about how it's a tax that's basically secured by the recording of a lien, and it's collected with the secured property tax roll. The tax itself is subject, there's a rate and method of apportionment, what they call RMA, of the special tax. And so every year, there is a rate established, and the method that rate's going to be passed on to the property owners, and it's annually imposed and collected with the property taxes. And there's a schedule that was set forth in the formation documents that outlines what that rate and method of apportionment is, and subject to a CPI escalator annually. Trying to think if there's any other high level or broad issues that need to be noted. There's more detail in the formation documents themselves that spell out specifically what is maintained and operated through that tax. But that's what that tax is for. So
The only other thing I was gonna ask you is to, in as plain language as possible, describe the city's role and responsibility as far as the CFD.
So the city's role and responsibility with the CFD is to collect the tax, and then to make sure that the tax is used for the purposes specified as a special tax. And that's pretty much, and also to collect the tax and then levy, make sure the accurate rate is levied every single year. And I'll say as a practical matter, that usually happens with the budget on an ongoing basis, because they should be its own fund in the city, just like we have a TOT fund, sales tax revenue. It should be one of the funds of revenue that the city has.
Frank, how is this being reported to the community as to how much has been collected? How much is in the fund and what it's being used for? I think everybody I've spoke to, they're all in the dark about it. They know their money's being collected every year. They don't know where it's going, how much there is, and what it's being used for. How is that going to be reported? Through council, or and who's in charge of this program? Who's in charge of where the money's spent and how it's being spent? Does council do that?
Yeah, so those are good questions. I would say that number one, remember, this is a special tax. So it's not a special district. It's not any other kind of individual entity. So it's a tax that we collect and gets reported through the budgetary process like we would any other fund. There's no special reporting. So for impact fees, this is another reason why I said it's not impact fee. For impact fees, you have to do these specific AB 1600 annual and 5-year reports to talk about what it is, what it's being used for specifically. But through the budgetary process, the city council, because it does adopt a budget every year, has the opportunity to ask questions, ask where the revenue is going, what expenses are being done for with that money, what isn't being used for that money, and that's the opportunity it would come up at least annually through that process. Now the CFD itself defines the sort of the administrator of this. The CFD administrator is essentially the city manager. But they're the ones that are responsible for making sure proper amounts levied every year, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, this is still something that council reviews as part of the budget, can ask questions through. But there's not going to be a standalone special reporting per se.
If you look at the audience here, most people are here because they want to know how this is being done, how it's being processed, how much money do we have. This has been going on for 3 or 4 years. These folks out here don't know how much we have in the fund, exactly how it's being used, and how we plan to report to them. I think that maybe should be put on a future agenda item, perhaps, as to how this is being handled.
Well,
Where we stand in this thing.
I think that Frank was trying to, in his description, describe it clearly that it's just like any other budgeted fund that we have. That it would be a standalone part of the budget, but it's not severed from the budget. It's not a special district, it's a special finance district.
There's no special reporting.
Right, there's no special reporting. It would be reported out during the budget process each year, like we look at warrants, like we look at anything else that was an expenditure. One of my questions was, does the enabling documents describe how much and how that admin fees are levied?
It specifies the rate and method of apportionment, so essentially how much gets taxed on what type of properties it gets taxed on. There's also a schedule where there's a CPI escalator. But the operation and maintenance costs, for example, baked into that is also cost for administrative costs related to that. But there's not a specific allocation as to how you can't find, for $100, $2 of the dollars have to be for admin, $4 for this. It doesn't do that, it's not granular like that. And it's usually, most cities, when they set up CFDs, don't get in granular like that because they want it to be flexible as well.
Well,
Yes.
Okay, so I get where you're coming from and the information you're looking for, but and I'm gonna go back in memory here because we did this a long time ago. This is, I've been on council for over 12 years.
2016.
But we took 8 years to do the DA for the subdivision, so it was a long process. So originally we put it on there, it came in towards the end of our DA negotiations. It was put in place to deal with parks, landscaping, and the streets and everything we listed basically, so that it didn't become a burden to the rest of the citizens. So that was why it was put in place. It was never meant to really be reported about. It was just, we collected the tax, we put it on top of your property tax to offset and mitigate the expense to the rest of the citizens so that they didn't have to eat the expense of that subdivision on them. So it was put in place simply just for that fact. So it wasn't ever meant to be a reportable thing like, it'd be in our budget, and so when the budget comes up and everyone gets to look at the budget, we get to look, you look at the budget, everyone look at the budget. Then we beat it up for 4 or 5 meetings, ish. And then, so there's lots of time to talk about this stuff, so it's just not one of those things that comes out. It's a special report that gets mailed to you, hey, here's your money that was collected, this is what it's due. It was just put in place to offset all and mitigate all expenses to the rest of the citizens of the city, only to deal with all your parks and, stuff like that. Does that make sense? Sure. You can throw it down.
Okay, so my question, and this came up because of our,
Can you just say who you are?
oh, I'm sorry. I'm the other half, I'm Marie. I'm
the duo.
Marie, Marie Fullick, and I live in St. Delridge. And this one came up because we actually had a homeowners meeting, and our homeowners dues went up 3 times, and all of a sudden, and we found out it was because we had to carry the liability of our streets. Because, and I don't know if this is correct, but the Zinfandel Ridge residents own the streets in Zinfandel Ridge, is what we're told, and so we have to carry the liability. So then the question became, who pays for the maintenance? Do we, does that come out of?
No.
Our funds, does this
It was
come out of?
donated back, it was donated back to the city after he broke ground and got ballooned. And then that's what your taxes go for, is to pay for that maintenance. So it's not burdening the rest of the city or citizens to maintain your streets. So that tax is collected, is put it in a special pot. And then when maintenance is done up there, it gets paid for out of that pot.
Okay, so how do citizens in our region or in our district or in our streets, because we have cracked streets, we have sinkholes that are forming, who do we notify to get those?
So we just opened up a new app that you can take a picture.
I do know about, I
Yeah.
just found out about
Right,
that.
so you can use the app, take a picture, and it goes to the appropriate department, and then they can come out and handle it.
Do they have to have it approved? I mean, does somebody approve it?
The city manager
Okay,
would assign
And Public Works.
the Public Works Department to look at it, see what needs to be done and how many hours to allocate towards that. Okay, and so, it would be the city manager. I'm gonna turn it over to Vice Mayor Ackerman.
Quick question to you, Peter. You mentioned that something was donated back to the city.
The streets. The streets get donated to the city.
So the,
It's common in any development.
so does the city own the streets?
Yes. City owns streets. They don't, or are they part of the?
Well, I think most of the time that's true. The developer dedicates right of way
Right.
and other things, but in this case, based on this exhibit, it looks like the HOA owns the roads in that area.
As I understood it,
Who owns,
But there's a difference between ownership and maintenance.
well, we know, right now we want to know who owns them, right?
Peter, thank you very much for that explanation, because it does seem like this tax was to ensure that we weren't a burden on everyone else.
Right.
But then by logical extension, we should have an opportunity to dictate how some of that money is being spent. To this point, if we own the roads up there, it is being reflected in the premiums that we are now having to pay for insurance to protect ourselves. So although the money can be used for maintenance, we're still being hit with insurance premiums. I don't know if the city has any liability for roads. We still have a lot of construction going on their heavy equipment. And we, as the citizens, are on the hook for those premiums. And I think that's part of our issue.
No. There, go ahead.
Bill Clackrock, live in Zinfandel Ridge, and I think you discussed it a little bit, Frank, which was around the part of that's landscaping maintenance. And so, well, 2 questions. One is, does it cover the entrance right off of 49 all the way up, or is
Yes.
like, does that the entryway? Because that's where there's a lot of.
Supposed to.
That's right.
It's supposed to.
That's that first question.
It's a right of way between between the Highway 49 and Port Drive, that's not part of what we're talking about.
So who owns
That's
that
a
red section?
But it was always up to Reader to maintain that. But it's part of the subdivision.
But not what we're talking about here, I don't think. That's separate.
Yeah, so I didn't know if that was part of it, so, if that's not part of it, that would be a separate comment, because there's significant landscaping issues there, if it is part of it, which I don't know if you can officially.
I mean, I honestly don't know on the ground what is and is not part of the maintenance obligation under this. I don't know if Kathleen does, but that's something we can look at.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I know. I don't know what's actually being maintained or not on the ground there.
So maybe that's something you can look into, because I think if it is, it sounds like there's the special tax that would have funds available. I think we've had 5 trees replaced. I have pictures of the 40 some odd trees and bushes that are dead. It'd be nice to have them replaced, and it sounds like if this fund is there, that'd be a fantastic opportunity where we don't burden the city, right? I think that's one of the reasons why we go there. We're not here to burden anybody. Obviously, we pay those special taxes, should take care of them.
That was the idea.
Today, it doesn't seem like that's happening.
Right.
Thank you, and I'm glad that Frank clarified the issue of if we don't have an answer for you, Bill,
Yeah.
or anyone else, we're going to get it for you. And I think that we should be careful to be able to say, I don't know right now, and I don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Let's get the right answer for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, agree.
Yeah, I'd like to say something on that too, is, I believe that there's only one council member that's still on council that was here at the time that this, so, you know, I'm kind of going, okay, we sure of this, or are we not sure of this?
There's gray areas we're not sure about.
But documents don't lie, and that's what we have to rely on.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike Sullivan, Plymouth, California. Just a couple of, I make a suggestion or a point, but I have a question first. Is this the only CFD in the city of Plymouth?
Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So I understand how these work, and I understand like somewhere like the city of Sacramento probably has a couple of hundred CFDs at least, right? So they don't have separate, the ability to have separate meetings or accountings for this kind of stuff, and I get that. But here we're small, and we do, and we're responsive to our residents. So I would ask a couple of things of the city. One is that every year, maybe at the end of the fiscal year, the beginning of the fiscal year, there's a standing agenda item that comes up for the Zinfandel CFD. So, you know, a report can be made by the city manager that time on where the money's going and what's being spent. I think that would be prudent. I think we can do that because we're small. I understand bigger places probably couldn't do it. It's not the thing, but I think it would be a great thing to do. Beyond that, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a advisory committee made up of the people within that Melrose district that can advise the city and kind of watch this, and that would have to be sanctioned by the city. Obviously, the city wouldn't have to do anything that committee says. It would be advisory, but if the city's interested in doing that, I think there's a bunch of people sitting here who would sit on that committee and be glad to do it. So that's my input. I do know of this CFD, there is a need for transparency because we asked questions a while back and the previous city manager realized that he thought we had a contract with Simmons to do the landscape within the CFD. And he went, wow, we actually, in looking at this, we don't have a contract. Nobody's really looked at this stuff. And I think an advisory committee could help the city out by taking that burden off of you guys and off of the city manager and maybe just kind of helping out with that. And so that would be my suggestion is one that the council direct city staff to put this on the agenda annually. And then also that the council direct city staff to explore forming. Thank you.
Kathleen?
Yeah, just for the record, the city does have a contract with Simmons Landscaping. They're not just up there, they're there because they do have a contract. And this has been discussed with the city already. The contract is extremely vague. And I would suggest to council that we look at that and we come up with a much more direct contract that actually spells things out, especially when we add the new city park in, it's gonna be more critical. I would strongly recommend that we, look at that contract and send it out to the person.
Kathleen,
I
Kathleen,
just-
is a contract just from Highway 49 to Fourth Street, that one area down there at the bottom, that's like all the, it's not part of Ziegler Ridge, it's a right of way. Design is a right of way. Is that the only portion that their contract exists, or are they do anything beyond that, as far as you know?
No, right now they're to do the entry, Zinfandel Parkway to the roundabout. And then the park would be included when we accept the park. That's all that Simmons is maintaining at this point. Like I said, I really strongly recommend that we look at the needs up there. And revise the contract to be clearer, because it just doesn't particularly say what items are gonna be done, and how many times, and what's expected.
Okay, really quickly, I want to clarify that the individual contracts or the individual things are not what's on the agenda. The agenda is of the broad overview of the CFD and what the city's roles and responsibilities are within that parameter. So individual contractors being named or talking about the contracts, that's not what we're doing here tonight.
I have a question, and thank you for the reminders. I'm gonna try to keep this on the agenda item. When the city, so the city's responsibilities would be to enter into a contract when necessary to provide some of these services. When the city does that, is the city obligated to, depending upon the dollar amount, do a request for proposal or a bid? If it's over.
You know what, it depends if it's, our purchasing code isn't that clear, but I would say this, if it's a public, two things, number one, if it's a public work, if it's a work of public improvement, it's some of the stuff that even though it's within Zinfandel property may qualify, it's required, and number two, even if it's not required, I still think it's a good idea, to do it, so.
Hi.
Mayor Plainfield, Patrick Chu, council member. Patrick, can you turn on the? I must have actually turned it off.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I'm the fire marshal for Amador Fire Protection District. I've been here for 3 years. Prior to that, I retired from the city of Roseville, been there for many years. So I work closely with the city staff here with Zinfandel. So I do the inspections there. Great people working for the city of Plymouth. This thing here, I've been for 3 years. The first 6 months doesn't count because you're trying to figure out where you belong, what you're supposed to do, where the workload is, and so forth. But when I got involved in this, and I had the fortunate talking to previous employee that used to work here, Chief White, myself, we met with Osborne and Colton when they were here, trying to figure this out ourselves. And this seems to be the biggest mystery in my 2.5 years that I've been here. I know that I heard the word as being a tax and Melrose, but even the Melrose has a sunset clause. If I'm not mistaken, this one here doesn't have a sunset clause, is that correct?
No, you're incorrect. It depends if their bonds were issued and with the covenants to the bond buyer. There were no bonds issued here, so it's for ongoing purposes. So there can be a sunset when there are facilities, but this was for.
This one here doesn't have that sunset clause.
In perpetuity.
Yeah, right, and they can't claim this on their taxes. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah, this is like an HOA fee that you gotta pay,
yeah.
that you can't claim for anything, right? And there's an escalator every year. Yeah, okay, all right. Well, when I met with Mayor Osborne, the city manager Osborne at the time, and we talked about this a few times, and it was hard trying to get some definitive answer. And I went to the tax department and county building, got a little spreadsheet here on how much is in the account. It was a lot of work, but I was just curious. The reason why I was curious is because part of this fund is supposed to go to public safety.
That's why I'm here. We have a station here, Station 122. I was just there. I've been for 3 years. I've retired from Roseville. I'm trying to bring some national classes here. I got a class coming up in November. 25 department members from throughout California. It's going to come here to Station 122. It would be nice if that station has a little bit of improvement there. So I'm just trying to figure out where that money is, that we can do some improvement for here in our city of Plymouth fire stations. Talk to the guys there. If you've been to Station 22, I encourage you to go there. The front doors, the side door is all rotten, needs to be replaced. The apparatus floor needs to be resurfaced. The chairs you see that we use at our lounge chair, those are given to us. We didn't buy those, so they're all falling apart. Guys stay there 24 hours a day, right? 2 or 3 days, sometimes in a row. So
Okay, I'm gonna have to stop.
Yeah.
Because it's my job to keep everybody on the straight and narrow.
yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize.
And we're way off.
I'm going off tangent. Okay, all right.
We're off the rails.
There is a contract
So-
that somebody gave me between City of Plymouth and the I'm suing from AAPD back in 2010. And it's talked about the cost of maintenance of that firehouse.
That's not, okay, that still it's not on the agenda. The agenda item is strictly about the city's roles and responsibilities and an explanation of what a CFD is. That's the only thing that's on the
Okay, all right,
agenda
okay.
tonight.
Well, okay, I'm just trying to look out for the interest of your station here at 122. And if there's funds there that can go to that, certainly,
It's noted,
yeah.
and we will.
We can make this a future agenda item.
During the budget process, all of this information will come in at that time, all the comments, how things should be utilized. Then the council makes a determination during the budget process of allocating for that year
Right.
what things should be
Right.
done
Yeah.
and the needs.
But all the funds that the people living there are putting into really should be a allocated dollar amount dedicated to the fees that they're paying for the services. And that's what I've been trying to figure out myself. And I don't even live there. I just was trying to do a little homework here on how we can improve Station 122.
I think that Station 122 is a future agenda item, as Councilmember Amoroso has stated. The budget will be coming up very soon. Will be budget hearings, and that's the time to bring up the needs for that district. But we also have to work, and this is off the agenda, so I'm gonna slap my own hand.
Okay, all right.
Because,
All right, I apologize if I'm going off the agenda.
Because we also have to stay within the parameters of our contract with AFPD, which is valid until 2030.
Right, okay. All right, well,
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Masters, I'm president of Plymouth, and I really appreciate that you've taken the time to discuss this. And as you know, it really was for the residents of the village, an eye-opener when our homeowners dues tripled. And that led to a series of events that's like, well, where are all these monies going for our homeowners dues? Not relevant necessarily, but it led us to ask questions about the CFD. It's kind of the same thing, like suddenly we realized that we're paying an additional tax without understanding where it goes. So thank you for your explanation, Frank, this evening. It's been very beneficial. I just have a simple question that maybe you can resolve now or could be discussed later. The reason that we became more aware was because of the insurance costs as well as the cost of a management company to take over our homeowners association. My question is simple. Is there anything in the charter for the CFD that would prevent that insurance being paid by the CFD? That was my question. So our homeowners dues went up exponentially, but maybe that should have been a provision within the CFD since that's what the money is for. The other question is, how often do we bid on the contracts for maintenance, et cetera. I think that's already been brought up, but thank you.
Thank
So so when you buy your house,
Yes,
Turn on your mic.
sorry, thank you. When you buy your house, the agent who sold it to you or the sales office should have explained all these fees to you prior to purchase, so that way you knew going in what you were potentially up against.
well, Peter, I know you read every word in your contracts in great detail. Actually, my wife and I did, but we give us a little memory stick of all the documents.
Right.
But until you actually, it's sort of like reading your owner's manual until you try to figure out how to make the auto rights work, okay? You've read it somewhere, but until it comes into play.
I'm not bad, I'm not.
No, I like illustrations, they make things, it helps with the explanation. So yes, it's in there, but there are some terms that are ambiguous. As you may well imagine, most of us are not trained in the legal field, so we read it and we're like, I think I know what that means. So, yes, there is some liability incurred by the homeowners, we accept that. But we also pay a premium to the city.
Right.
Does every other resident in the city of Plymouth pay for insurance to insure the liability of their streets? I doubt it. So I'm just saying, shouldn't that be a factor in this agreement? That's my question. I don't know.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, which is also for the future, about what things, and during budget time is absolutely perfect. And when Frank has additional time to dive into other CFDs and we look at it, we might be able to look at what things can we fund out of a CFD and have it much more clear.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm John Coleman, a former city council member on board which which Frank, is it my understanding now that the roads are actually private roads in Chippendale?
I believe so. Whatever was originally lot R, which may have been a chunk of the development, those roads are owned by the HOA, I believe.
So is that the same situation with the water and the sewer?
No, those are city infrastructure, but the CFD does pay for maintenance of those items, I believe.
CSD does pay.
CFD, yes.
Is there a current a separate separation of the budget? Or, I mean, is the maintenance of water, ongoing water maintenance is being done citywide, split between Zip and Delta? Is there two items for that?
I don't know what it looks like in the budget.
I think it might be getting double charged, but anyway, they have the ability, if it's a private road, they have the ability to gate number, I would think. They could make it a gated community. If it's private roads. And
According to the agreement, the roads are public use, right?
so they.
Okay, and I'm also gonna mention, because it is my job to keep us all on the straight and narrow, that's also not on the agenda, the gated community and those things. We're gonna stay on task. The CFD is all we're talking about.
Point out what the status in the agreement of the roads and the water and the sewer. And that's what I was asking for. And I really believe this thing that was set up with Reader Association for their benefit is overly burdening the people in Chippendale, because I think they're double paying for facilities that the city of Plymouth is getting and recovering all their expenses for roads and everything, and then it's in the towns is paying extra. They're paying into the city and then paying extra. So I believe that it's not set up as an equal benefit with Citadel and such. And to that matter, I would like to apologize to people from Citadel for being a part of creating this mess.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else in City Hall that would like to speak on this issue or have any additional questions on this issue? And I want to make it clear, you're going to go home and you're going to think of questions that you wanted to ask. And we will always take your questions at City Hall, or individually, every one of the council members will also take comments, questions, have a discussion. The budget is coming up, and I think now that we've put light on this issue, that it's going to get a lot of attention during the budget process. That was also part of the point, I think. So bravo for all being here. And thank you very much. Peter, did you have something additional?
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for coming.
Okay.
And it might not be one that can be answered, but it's a question, Frank. When this tax is assessed, how is it assessed, the value of the property?
No, it's not an ad valorem tax. Ad valorem just means it's tied to the measurement of the value of the property. So it's not like a percentage of the property, it's set out by a flat rate.
I think it started out,
Parcel,
I think it started out at $1,500.
whatever it was, and then it had escalators, but it's a flat rate, it's not an ad valorem.
I'm still confused. Who owns the roads? The city or the HOA? I get who's gonna repair them to come out of our $1,800 a year per house. Who? Right?
I'm listening.
Okay.
So for this exhibit, I think that was from a development agreement, it says the lot R roads, which I assume were all the roads contemplated within the development at the time. The HOA has fee title to them, so they own them. Which makes sense if the HOA said that they want to increase the liability insurance because they're not public rights, they're not owned, that's not right away that's owned by the city. It wasn't right away that was dedicated, just like you have other neighborhoods, private roads that you have to fund to take care of and all that kind of stuff. And if it was a public roadway, for example, the city, through its own risk pool, essentially insures that risk. So it makes sense that if the HOA wouldn't ask the homeowners to fund the liability insurance if they didn't also believe that they own the roads.
Thank you.
If there's anyone on the Zoom call that would like to comment or has a question, please wave by pressing *9. I want to make sure that everyone in the audience has had an opportunity to ask or say anything that they would like to under this agenda item at this time. Is there anyone on the council that has any additional questions, comments on the agenda item?
Not at this time.
And I'm pretty sure, that there's no double dipping in the city, so I want to be clear on that one. I think that, I don't agree with that statement. So I think there's something, but we need to look into it and make sure that it is not happening, because if it is, then we'll have to correct it. They're pretty positive. There's two separate issues here.
Okay. We have had a lively discussion about this, and I think that's absolutely great. And like I said, the budget process is this is going to be a very important part of that. And if some of the issues can be paid out of CFD funds, and there's funds to be utilized, then that's the perfect time to do that allocation. So moving on to 7.2, council review and discussion and possible direction regarding FEMA grant loan agreement of $150,000 between Amador County and the city of Plymouth. I think Kathleen has this information.
Yes, so, we, applied for a grant from FEMA after the Santa fire, and then we had a flooding issue. The Santa fire was declared by the governor as, a state of emergency. Part of the grant was that the city had to put forth $150,000 toward the repairs of Arroyo Ditch. At that time, the city requested from the county if they could help them with that original $150,000. And the county agreed, and they went into an agreement with the county, and the city received $150,000 from the county. It had a 5-year grace period. And that grace period ended, I believe, in May of 2022. And the county was expecting the first payment on that and didn't receive it. And that's when I was contacted by the county. They wanted to resolve that. And they knew that at that time that we had a lot of turnover. So they approached me. Their suggestion was that they could push the loan out for a year to help us get back together. The assessor's office was on board with that. Anything to amend this agreement, though, has to go through the Board of Supervisors. And the way the contract is written, their vote rules. We do have a clause in there that says we can request up to a 5-year extension on that grace period. But like I said before, it would be up to the Board of Supervisors, whether they're willing to accept that or not. And so that's where we stand right now. I need to know where you want to go with this. Because like I said, the offer that was put forward was for a year. If you want to go for a longer period of time, then I'll have to approach Brian Onetto and ask him to bring that to the board. Because that's the process we're gonna have to go through no matter what we request or agree to. But the final decision is gonna be the Board of Supervisors, whether they grant us any extra time or not.
Can I say one thing?
Of course.
I'm just curious, are we talking about how to repay the 150? Or are we going off the rails if we talk about what the 150 is for and why we have it? Because I know it was a matching funds issue.
It's matching.
And I understand that. And I realize, or I think that the original grant was for $1.2 million to repair the Sandy fire and the flood issue, which happened back in 2017. Anyway, so I guess at the time we didn't have the funds to put up the matching funds, so we went to the county to get the matching funds, which is the 150. So the agenda says just as how we are going to repay the county. And I guess to go into the weeds right now is as to where that money went, how much is left. I understand. I'll say one little thing that I know there's an engineering firm that's in the middle of looking over this whole project. And I know, and I understand their contract was $150,000 to do the engineering on this project. Did they get the whole 150? Do we have the 150? I guess, again, I'm going off the rails a little bit, but the point is, I think what Kathleen said that probably the best method is to see if we can't push this thing out for another year and get more information as to which this whole thing leads into a whole lot of different things we can talk about tonight.
I know.
That we're not going to do that. I know that. So, okay, I'll let it go with that.
I guess what I'm wondering in helping make the decision on this agenda item, out of the $150,000, do we have any of it that was not spent? And then my second part to that question is, I think I know the answer to this, but has any of it been repaid?
Okay, so the answer to your question about has any of it been repaid to the county, the answer is no. And the quarterly payments should have been started this May. That's how this came up to me. I knew nothing about the 5-year deferment and whatnot. As far as 150,000 goes, at this point, I can tell you what has gone on with REY Engineering. They originally had a contract for $10,000. And that money was used. It came back again in 2018. And a new contract was made with them for $149,834. Because the reason that REY was employed in the first place was somebody had to go through engineering wise to figure out what was damaged, what could be fixed, what couldn't be fixed, and how the best way to fix it would be. So I can tell you that the last I have heard of REY, which has probably been within the last 6 months, this contract here for the 149, they were still doing work on the ditch. So there hasn't been a new contract since then. So they're still working within that contract of the $149,000. I'm not aware of them coming up with any final report yet. If you haven't been around your New York area, between the sand fire and the floods, it totally destroyed the Arroyo ditch in the area over on the El Dorado County side of the Arroyo ditch. And it's taken a long time to figure out, you know, where they're gonna go and what they're gonna do to try to put that back together.
Okay, so I've looked through the interest section of the contract, and I think what would be a smart way to go is to identify different options. There was a 0 interest for the first 5 years and 1% interest for the next 5 years after that. So if we go to the county and say, let's look at some different options, and then we actually have the paperwork in front of us with the different options laid out, I think that might be a good way to go.
Point of clarification, I think the 5-year deferral, at least the way I read the contract, is if we request it and they grant it, we would not be paying interest on that deferral because they're treating it as an extension of the original first 5 years. So that would, you know, just off the top, to me, it makes sense to see if they would be, because it's already at least contemplated as an option in the contract to go back to them and request a 5-year deferral of the 5-year deferral, another 5-year extension of it basically, and confirm with them that would be at 0% interest. And if that isn't the case, then find out what they want and we can come back with those options to the council.
Any other comments?
So are you saying next 5 years, payments only, no interest, or are you saying no payment next 5 years?
No payment, no payment, yeah.
Another referral, another deferral period, correct?
And that's where I was at. I was like, if we get another 5 years, because we negotiate a year. And then in the year we can't pay it. Then we have to renegotiate again. So I'm gonna go 5 years. If we get it paid off in a year, great. If we don't, then just get that. We wait before we're back on. Or start making payments.
Am I correct? They want us to go on the hook for 10 years. 1%. 10 years is quarterly. One payment per quarter. That would be 30 quarters in 10 years. That's 5,000 a quarter for 10 years plus interest. That's what they want, right? That's their request.
Well, I don't think it's their request, that's just right now the
It's what's in the
contract.
contract.
Yeah, the contract's after 5 years, technically we have to pay it back, if we don't, we pay interest, correct, at a quarterly basis. And I cannot do the math in my head as fast as you can, so. I'll just have to take your word for that.
But the way you understand it is 5-year extension, 0% interest. So.
Yeah, the way I read the contract is it allows the city to request an extension, a 5-year extension of the original 5-year deferral period. So then
Also, they can decide as they want to.
they can deny it if they want to, but then if they deny it, then hopefully presumably we can discuss and negotiate options and then come back to the council with those options.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak or ask a question on this agenda? I thought you'd get up since your name's on the document, John.
Yeah, I've seen the document, it has my name on it. But there's several questions that need answering. First off, when we got the $150,000, it was a temporary thing to satisfy FEMA in order to get the grant. And we were expected to be able to cover our portion, that $150,000 for any kind of service. And that was going to be worked out through the our involvement with the project going forward. Evidently, we haven't built for any kind of services that we've done with our own engineer or any, there's been, it looks like no accounting. The mere fact that we had $150,000, I don't believe anybody knows where that is, where that account is. And I talked to REI, Bruce Torrey, who used to be the finance director for the county of public works. We go back a long time. I talked to Bruce Torrey, he said, well, we actually spent with $149,000, we spent $95,000. And there are actually two projects. One is the sand fire and the other is the flood. The flood damage, they completed their studies, and that was $50,000. And they spent $45,000. They're at a crossroads now where there's some questions. They told me that they have to talk with Frank about moving forward with the EIR and what is going to be required as far as EIR. In some cases, the EIRs have been waived on these FEMA projects. And so that is some of the issues that are moving forward. But we need to know if we put up $150,000 as a match for $1.2 million, where's the $1.2 million?
FEMA can roll it back and say.
There's somebody in the audience that was in charge, or at least just saved it. I think we lost that 1.2, and I think Mr. Wise got it back for us through his efforts and contact with FEMA. Is that correct, Jim?
It is.
And
They recommitted the 1.2 back, yes.
we lost it, you got it back for us.
Well, it was a pretty good team effort, but we all got it together, yeah.
I think you did.
But is that 1.2 in the city's hands now?
No, I think, didn't we get a payment? Did we get something like $80,000 initially? Is that
We
correct,
got
Jim?
that before.
As a, well, part of the 1.2 or not?
That was an advance for administration that we got.
Out of the 1.2 or not?
I know.
Okay.
Okay, I know this agenda has a lot of gray in it, but I'm gonna keep it black and white. And what Kathleen has placed us on the agenda for this evening, the only thing that's on the agenda about this issue is whether or not we want to proceed with the 5-year extension of the payback, or we want to pay it back
Yes.
now quarterly. So that's the decision that's on facing the council tonight. But I agree with you, John, and I would like the council to be able to have a larger discussion at a later date of the entire FEMA issue, because it has not been spelled out to the council very clearly in a very long time.
Yeah, well, we need to dig into it and have it on a future agenda. Because there is money out there committed to REI that doesn't need to be spent if we're moving forward. And so we need to get that, and see what's actually happening. And one of the other things we need to do is to take the river enforcement West Waters report and analyze it. And get that to our engineers and our report, see where we're going with our whole project. You know, I've been involved with this project forever. My dad actually was involved with the water sinking, which this 150,000 came from.
Yeah, the report came out today, you'll see it soon.
Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in City Hall that would like to speak on this agenda item? Is there anyone on the Zoom call that would like to press *9 to wave their hand to comment or ask a question on this agenda item? Okay, so what we need from the council is either by a motion or consensus to authorize and provide direction to the city manager of what direction the council would like to go with this, just this agenda item.
5 years.
I like the 5 years money.
Yeah, 5 for free.
Frank, is consensus all right with?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we are up to the city manager's report, 8.1 on the agenda. Kathleen, we picked on you enough, haven't we?
Okay, well, hopefully this will be a little rainbow coming across our way. So, I reached out to the city manager, Michael Rock, over at IM, and he was gracious enough to help me out with this issue. He highly recommended somebody who might be able to help us with our financial needs, at least for now. Her name is Mary Morris Mayorga. I reached out to her. She has a lot of experience in administrative accounting, definitely could step in as our financial lead person. She's willing to do it. We signed a contract with her for $5,000 just to get started. She knows the reports we're missing. She can take care of that. She's familiar with city budgeting. Typically she can step in and help out with the things that our past financial director was doing. So hopefully we can get her started within the next couple of weeks, and we can get going on some of those. And then at some point when she gets her self kind of acquainted with what our financials are, then maybe it will be hopefully I will be able to give you a lot better answers to those questions. So I'm hoping she'll be aboard very soon.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. That is really good news. We've been looking for direction for a finance director for a long time, so thank you. Any questions of Kathleen? And did you have anything else to talk about this evening?
I got a couple of updates from Aaron that I can share with you. Planning right now, they're working on the short-term rentals to go with the new policies they put in the municipal code. They're reaching out to the business people in the city. A lot of them never got a business license or set up their TOT or anything like that. So we are moving ahead on that, trying to get everybody on the same page, get the TOT taxes paid on those properties. The housing element is being done with the county. They're working on that. They're hoping to have the draft review within the next month to come out. They have a consultant, de novo planning, they're working with And then, Greelage is still working on their EIR for now. So that's Erin's little update she gave me to share with you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you, Eric.
Okay, if there's no further questions for Kathleen, we can move into council reports. Councilmember Amoruso, would you, oh, go ahead.
I haven't got a report, but I'm curious, 5.4, was that approved for both functions? Was it, okay, was that clear about that? Been approved?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Councilmember Amoruso, did you have anything tonight?
Yes. So I'll try to keep it short and sweet. Went down 2 weeks ago at this point to lead California cities, and it was very beneficial. Saw a lot of good breakout sessions. And did some good networking. I think actually I need to find a card, but a headhunter for a city manager. They work with multiple companies to look for special needs type of for cities with special needs, all sizes. So I'll get that card to Kathleen, our attorney. Hopefully they can connect with them, and maybe that'll help spread some stuff there. So with that being said, it was a great time at Viola. Valerie and I had a very nice time when we were there. And future agenda items, I'd like to talk about the classic one we have on our little pedestal back behind City Hall. And I've already kind of started talks with the fire department. They would love to have it over there, moved over there and maybe rehabbed and usable so that they could use it. And it would open up parking for all the city staff to get off Main Street. So I know there's been talk about scrapping it or getting rid of it. It's like, well, it's part of our history. So if we could, talk about it.
Right. Could you put that together in writing for Kathleen? Do a description of the agenda item you're looking for, that would be great.
Yeah, because it's going from city property to city property, so it's not like,
Right.
It's going to a different place or to different people. And then, he also said he'd come in and want to talk about it, our chief.
And what is it you want to move from property to property?
So right behind City Hall here, there's a tower with a klaxon horn.
Right.
Oh,
Which
okay.
is like emergency horn, really loud.
I've heard it before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not been in service for a lot of years, and there was talk about for the last several years, we could just get rid of it because it's kind of in the way. And we asked to create parking for off-street for all the employees to park back there and not consume our valuable parking on Main Street. So I talked to them and said, yeah, right by the flagpole would be a great spot for it, and then they could rehab it, paint it, get it rewired, get it usable so that they can use it if they need it. So it's kind of part of our history.
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's like one of the last things left of the old fire department. That's all I got.
Councilmember White,
I'm good.
Councilmember Sim,
I'm good.
Vice Mayor Ackerman.
I have nothing to report, but as far as a future agenda item, obviously we talked about some things earlier. But then also, I'd like to have a discussion about the future of the pop-up structures across the street. And to kind of look at and see, was this a success? Whether it meant, financially for the city or just in drawing more people or helping vendors. And just kind of analyze how did it go? And then talk about, do we want to continue, leave them there, or do we want to make other arrangements?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I was talking to someone, maybe changing the rules.
Somebody commented, from my perspective, they've only been successful when we had special events. We were hoping to have rent them out by the day, by the weekend, and so forth. And the first year, there was a few of those, but it didn't really work out. As far as special events like Harvest Fest and Christmas Market, they're terrific for that. But if you only have 2 or 3 events a year, they're probably not utilized very well for that matter, as you should, that's for your your head of the question in that, I agree with that. So
Did you have a
either we have more events using them, or we.
So I think the discussion on
Yeah.
Oh, you-
agenda
oh,
items.
you want my,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Well, I was kind of involved in that,
Yeah.
so I thought I'd chime in, thank you.
We're all on a roll tonight.
Yeah, I know.
Did you have anything else, Council Vice Mayor Ackerland?
Not at this time. No, thank you.
Okay, yes, League of California Cities was very valuable, it usually is. Peter and I both attended, we're not allowed to call it the rural caucus, but we attended the session for the rural communities in California. It's one of the few things that where you get to discuss issues that are relative to us. Most of the agenda items are really focused towards large communities, 200,000 of them. So, but it was very valuable. I also talked to some headhunters too. Future agenda items, I had a couple of things before we got in these deep discussions tonight. But I will let Kathleen know. And I did want to mention that I am assisting Kathleen in working on our CDBG, CV1, CV2, and CV3 projects with CDBG, HCD, it's Housing and Community Development. So it's going very well. We're not going to give them money back. It looks like we'll be able to broaden the scope to be inclusive on even mortgage payments and rental payments that may have been missed during COVID. So it's a good program and we need to take advantage of it if we can. So that's it for me. Let's see what else we got here.
That's it, closed session.
Session.
Okay, thank you
everyone for
everyone for coming. And we really do appreciate it.
Because it's good to hear from the citizens, that's what this is about, that's why we meet. So it's great, thank you.
He's reporting out, meetings adjourned.
After considering item of real property negotiations, there was no reportable action.